And right now, I've got someone joining me who also is sort of going back and forth between Bangladesh and really trying to establish these creative links. So I've got with me here an amazing creative person, actually, and Ruhul Abdin, and he's a co-founder of Paraa and also an urban architectural research specialist. Have I got all that right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Have you had far to travel today?
I did not know.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I know you are based in Bangladesh and you come here and you travel back and forth. Can I just ask, so where were you born, Bangladesh or here?
I was born in Maulabi Bazar in Sylhet.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And then when did you move to?
We moved in '93, so I was about 7 or 8.
Ah, okay. So you're sort of
and
formative.
I grew up in Darlington.
Oh, okay. So your formative years were here,
Yep.
Primary years were over there. And you've somehow managed to forge this beautiful relationship, haven't you, really, with Bangladesh and England, going back and forth. If you could tell us, what is it that you do?
So I co-run an architecture design studio. And in the studio, we focus on working with communities specifically. So a lot of it is designing tools and methods to design better with people. And so we also teach in the studio, especially to younger architects,
Wow.
planners and designers. So we teach in the studio, we research in the studio. We also run a small gallery
Amazing.
in Dhaka. And we've just recently completed a very, very complicated, but I think a very powerful new project called Machan in Dhaka.
Amazing.
And I also then practice as an artist as well. So that allowed me to also be to set up an organization here called Oitijjo. So I also co-founded this
Right.
charity for supporting young creatives in London also and in the UK.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what does this charity do? How do you kind of sort of encourage these youngsters to get involved?
We have a small space in Tower Hamlets,
Right.
and it's also finding and supporting and putting on exhibitions and providing workshops. So one of the big installation projects we've just done now is part of the Canary Wharf Winter Lights Festival.
Amazing.
And that was working with the community, working with especially women. And Sharma, who's my co-facilitator in this particular project,
Yep.
she ran the workshops with 10 British Bangladeshi women.
Amazing.
They talked about their childhood, they talked about the games they played.
Wow.
And then that was then translated into a very, very large art installation that's currently... Today's the last day, but
Today's the last day? Oh, no.
sadly.
Quickly, if you use me to come and go get it.
But it will travel to the rest of the
fantastic.
country in the next coming winter
Okay.
in other light festivals.
Fantastic.
And I think it's a really exciting kind of way to tell our stories. So it's
Yeah.
it's a very different project to what we normally do in a studio in Bangladesh.
Yep.
But it was a very powerful way to tell our mothers, our aunts,
Absolutely.
their experiences, but also then put that in a very, very central, mainstream
Yes.
space also.
I love that. I love the idea of our stories being told through light. You know, that's just so symbolic, isn't it? How do you sort of translate, for the layman, because I know you're the artist, but how do you translate that, the ideas, the initial ideas and discussions onto something so creative? Like, what's the sort of process that involves?
Over the years, we've sort of really learned very different ways of working with people. So one of the biggest and most important thing is how we listen as a creative, you know, and how we then translate what we listen to. So we often use very hands-on methods like workshopping, crafting, making together, thinking together, designing together, making models, writing stories, you know, photographing together. So it's very, very messy, very, very creative.
Yeah.
And it takes time. And then it's up to us as a studio then to go through all this information and begin to see actually what that might look like as a design or a project.
Yep. I think the viewers are actually getting a little clip of some of your work as well, which is incredible.
Yeah, so we've done so many different ways, you know, and one of the biggest things that we focus on is collaboration.
Right.
So how do we actually work with people?
Yes.
How do we work with other creatives? How do we also, now that we are, you know, we've been working as a studio for almost 10 years now.
That's amazing. So it's not a new thing, really, actually, quite established.
We're quite established. You know, we're an international award-winning studio
Incredible.
also.
Yep.
And one of the things that we really care about is actually how we work with people.
Right.
And so we support the people to work through the ideas. And the contexts that we work in are very, very complex. So, for example, we've built shelters for homeless people. We've built kind of public spaces for
Amazing.
children with disability to play in. And the current project that we've just finished building is in a in a very, very large bosti, in a low-income settlement,
Yep.
where we worked with, I think, 12 under 25-year-olds, go through the whole process
Yep.
of designing together and then building that physically.
That's amazing. Is that in
Yeah.
Dhaka as well?
It's in Dhaka also. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, these are things that are not just ideas and concepts, but clearly having some kind of like grassroots effects.
Absolutely, yes.
I love that. So you're actually creating these ideas that are abstract, but you're bringing it to life, aren't you, really?
Yes.
That's fantastic. What's been one of the sort of highlights so far?
I think there's so many.
Yep.
And I think actually what we've just completed in December, it took us almost 4 years from inception, like just thinking about the idea of having we take it for granted in London. There's so many public spaces.
Absolutely.
So many cultural centers. But at the same time, in Bangladesh, there isn't that. Especially in Dhaka, there's such limitations of public spaces. And we worked with the community over the last 2-3 years to understand actually, how can we build this? Is it possible? What are the complications in designing? But also designing is maybe easy, but actually going through the actual complications of building it.
The practicalities
How do we
of it.
build something so it doesn't, for example, get destroyed, broken, burnt, etc.?
And I guess that space is so important, isn't it? Like you said, I mean, in Bangladesh, you've got such a sort of family-dominated kind of identity, people coming in and out of each other's houses, the cousins getting together. But you also want that community space, that public space outside the home.
And also, yes, absolutely. And I think we work with, young women, young girls, and they talk a lot about how unsafe it is in the city, in their communities, harassments at nighttime, etc. And it's very real, And so a lot of my colleagues are also gender diverse. We're very sort of inclusive as a studio. And within that, we are all very sensitive and we pay attention to actually caring about doing community work.
Right.
And it feels abstract because we're also designers and we want to make something beautiful.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we want to have a very beautiful building.
It's a beautiful space that's safe.
At the same time, yes.
Right, exactly. I love that. I think that's great. What do you think sort of inspired you as an artist, as a creator, from when you were growing up? Any kind of like real source of inspiration?
I think growing up in the 90s in North England.
Was it Darlington that you mentioned when we were talking earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I didn't have access to any other cultural kind of markers in terms of historically being aware of who am I and what's my identity. And of course we are Sylheti, we have a very big family. We all have big families here. And I think when I was studying both A-levels and going to architecture school, I was also really curious about who am I and where am I from. And so after I finished architecture school, I went to travel to Bangladesh.
Right.
And it was a very luxury and privilege to be able to travel on my own, intern with a sort of an architecture studio there for a while, but also to learn that actually there's so much more that is there that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
And I was curious to know more, to research more, to travel more and engage more. And I was very, very lucky to meet Arifin.
Right.
At the time when I was doing my gap year. And we talked a lot about this idea, what is the purpose of architecture?
Yeah.
What can we do as young, optimistic, idealistic kind of creatives who want to make a difference, who actually can make a difference if we actually think about it long term.
Right.
So my master's program was about urban strategic planning. And that was really important because it helped me to actually think long term, big vision, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
And things take time, really understanding actually to make change or an impact, you have to be there.
Yeah.
And I think being there physically is so different to saying, I'm going to do this from London.
Absolutely.
And
but you're
so being
there on the ground, you're seeing it, smelling it, breathing it in, aren't you, really?
Yeah. And also it allows me to work with my team, but also be involved in navigating with all of the different complexities that exist in Bangladesh, like Dhaka is messy, Bangladesh is messy.
Yes.
It's
and then you've got all the problems of traffic and travel and just getting A to B in Bangladesh is never A to B, is it?
Yeah.
It's just,
it's just the chaos of everything. And, as an urban planning specialist,
right.
We are able to sort of navigate some of these things. And we really wanted to focus on absolute grassroots issues.
Right.
So one of the other projects that we did was work with street children and with a charity that helped them design sort of small playgrounds and small spaces, but understanding that actually what we want to do is highlight examples of how design can be an absolute important factor in
Absolutely.
the way people's lives are developing.
Yeah. It's like we said earlier, it can be beautiful, but also powerful and have impact.
Absolutely,
you know? So, I mean, just generally speaking, I'm just wondering, like, across the world, has there been any kind of place, including Bangladesh, or it could be London, anywhere, but anywhere that you've traveled to where there's a building that really resonates with you? Like, for me, you know, I'm born and brought up in England, you know, London, and for me, I don't know why, but the National History Museum, I just love that building. Every time I go there, I love it, you know, and it's just stunning, and it just, there's something about the building that really kind of, you know, calls to me. Is there anything like that that, you know, resonates with you, or just the beauty of it, or?
Yeah, I absolutely, actually, weirdly enough, I'm an atheist, but I absolutely love churches and mosques.
Right, yes.
So there's so many to list,
Yeah.
but one of my favorite mosques is actually the Bait al-Mukarram in Dhaka.
Right.
And one of my most favorite cathedrals is Durham Cathedral.
Oh yes, Durham Cathedral,
in
yeah.
the north.
Yes, yes.
And
it's stunning. It is stunning.
But
yeah.
I think it's, you know, as a practicing person who does so much work around buildings, it's hard to say one building actually, because actually even the buildings we've built, we actually love the building we've just built is so amazing, and we're hoping that it will have like an impact in the community.
Yes.
In a way that I think we weren't ready for, and so actually. So I'm excited for that. So we're excited about what will happen next.
Yeah.
So yeah, so churches and mosques, despite being an atheist.
There's still something about it that just kind of like calls your heart.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of you know, the things that you're designing at the moment, you know, are there any projects that are coming up? I know you've mentioned one that you've just completed. Anything else that's coming up? Where do you see yourself in sort of like the next 5 years or 10 years?
We really want to think, like, to work across Bangladesh. We want to start thinking about looking at how cities are being designed.
Right.
And we want to start scaling up the ideas that we've been testing. You know, we've been testing small ideas for the last 10 years. And so we have a lot of knowledge and research and evidence. It's actually, if this is scaled up, if this is done in multiple places. So, you know, we would love to, like, you know, design in Sylhet, design in Molabi Bazar, go back to my actual roots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And figure out actually how can we be of use there.
Yes.
And because I think that's also missing. But at the same time, what we hope is we want to be designing more cultural and public-facing kind of infrastructural buildings.
And I love how you said that, you know, you're getting people, local people involved in these projects. How important is that? Because you could really just get the professionals, you know, get expertise from here, right? But how important is it to you that you're actually communicating with and collaborating with those local people?
I think it's been the absolute most important, like, game changer for us. You know, we were really thinking, actually, how do we create an ecosystem? So, you know, we teach what we know, you know, we research, we share the research, we design together, and teaching young, you know, wannabe architects, wannabe designers, and we've done that, you know, over the last couple of years.
Amazing.
Like, helping shape their ideas, you know. So we actually teach like a professional program in the studio, and we've had students who've gone on to then further education internationally elsewhere.
So you're gaining from them, but they're also gaining from you,
so we're
right?
also, we're basically able to get young graduates from Bangladesh to go abroad.
That's
a lot
amazing.
of the times they're able to use the experience they get with us to be able to go into absolutely prestigious universities all over the world.
How wonderful. That's fantastic. Really, you're just doing an amazing job. Now, Ruhul, part of the show, the new thing this year in 2025 is that we get a guest from a previous show to write a question, to put it into that little glass next to you.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind taking that out, there should be a question in there from a previous guest. Would you mind reading the question out and just letting us know who has asked it?
Okay. How can we work together to improve primary care in rural Bangladesh?
Oh, that's a tough one.
From Abu Siddiqui, who's also a friend.
Oh, fantastic. There you go. Actually, it's a gift then, isn't it?
It is a
That's
gift.
brilliant. Okay. What do you think?
I'll put it back in there.
Thank you.
We actually, so when I first went to Bangladesh, we actually did a project with the Bromley by Bow Centre.
Right.
They were out there doing actual primary care, post-maternity kind of care work. So I was involved in sort of thinking through what this looks like and what is the infrastructure from a design perspective.
Yeah.
But since we've been doing so much work throughout Dhaka, especially around vulnerability, street children, homeless women.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's in an urban setting, but if we shift it to like the village and gram, I think one of the biggest things is keep on building evidence. So training and building evidence and having the research to say, actually, here is the way we do this. And forcing perhaps both the government and the private sector and the NGO sectors in Bangladesh, and also actually a lot of people who are here in London who are spending a lot of money funding projects, you know, and I think we all have families, cousins, uncles who are funding a yatim khana, funding a madrasa, funding whatever. But I think actually what would be really powerful is that
it's bringing it all together somehow.
Channeled a little bit more smartly.
Yes.
You know, so if there is a strategic way to actually say, actually, you know what, if there's 200 people who are all financing different centers.
Bring it all together, absolutely.
Bring it all together to actually talk to each other and say, actually, how can we actually leverage each other's resources?
I love that.
And work with universities, you know, both.
And as you said, it's all evidence-based research, isn't it? So that's what gives it that kind of reality.
Crucial.
Now, I wish I could carry on talking to you because you're so interesting, and I think you're going to have loads more to bring back to us. We are going to go to something else in a second, but before we do that, if you could perhaps stay in the studio, write a question for a guest in the future. You don't know who it is. It could be a friend, it might not be. You were lucky, but that would be brilliant. Thank you so much for your time on the show. I've really appreciated you coming onto the couch today.
Thank you.
Really, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I really hope that you'll come back and join us again.
Thank you.